During the summit, African leaders acknowledged failures in tackling Africa's numerous conflicts and unconstitutional government takeovers. Let's bring in our reporter, Robert Nagila, who has been keeping an eye on the final hours of the summit. Robert, good to see you there. What's the latest at this hour and what stood out on the final day?
Well, Beatrice, let me begin with your last question there. It's really difficult to pinpoint a particular highlight today for the simple reason most of those meetings, if not all, were all behind closed doors. Now, the outcomes of those meetings today were supposed to be relayed to us in press briefings. That has not happened. There were very few of those. But I can tell you that the one we were particularly waiting for was the Peace and Security meeting, which was supposed to have begun at 6 p.m. local time, but has yet to begin as we speak. However, personally, and I think for a lot of people who attended this particular summit, the highlight, if we were to include yesterday as well, was that speech by the African Union Commission Chairperson Moussa Faki at the opening ceremony, where apart from acknowledging that, yes, we've had a lot of successes during his tenure over the past 7 years, he was also bold enough to be blunt about the areas where the Commission was just not making any headway, especially on conflicts. When it comes to conflicts, it said that there was a huge problem, but perhaps one staggering fact that shocked a lot of people, and I suspect had a lot of leaders in that hall very uneasy, was that fact that he gave that over the past 3 years, 93% of the decisions taken at the summits, at the leadership level, have yet to be implemented. So some very worrying figures and facts being presented there. Now, in terms of the closing ceremony, that was to have happened immediately after the Peace and Security Committee. We have no idea at this particular moment what time that will happen. Now, I suspect the delays are because of a number of reasons. It could be the certain wording in the draft that they're not agreeing, or it could be that they've just not reached a consensus on a number of issues. So we'll just have to wait and see as to when we will have this final press briefing and communique. They may actually decide to skip that Peace and Security Committee briefing because time is really gone, and there's a lot of leaders who've already left. In fact, most of the delegates have already departed. Beatrice?
Right. So, Robert, you've talked about the African Union Chair's sentiments on the problem with Africa and implementation of mandates. But the AU leaders also admitted that the continent has not been very good at implementing what is resolved at the summit. So what's coming out especially on how to execute that implementation agenda of the African Union?
Well, Beatrice, Kenya's President William Ruto has been appointed to champion the reform program, succeeding President Paul Kagame. Now, ostensibly, what's going to happen over the next few weeks and months, President Kagame's team is then going to have to sit down with him, brief him on what they had achieved and what was left, what needs to be implemented. And once he has a proper understanding of that, they will then forge forward. Knowing President Ruto, he's been very strong-willed and strong-minded on what direction he believes this African body needs to go. So we expect to hear a lot more from him in that direction. Some of the things they have to tackle immediately are, for example, what the African Union Commission Chairman Moussa Faki was talking about. The Commission simply doesn't have the powers, and that is simply down to the leaders themselves, who are not willing to relinquish some powers to the Commission so that it is able to carry out its mandate effectively. Then there's the issue of financing as well. There's a lot of countries that still owe money to the body and are not up to date with their budgets, so that also needs to be tackled. But the issue of peace and security. That is an urgent issue that the Commission has to find a way to begin tackling some of these problems as soon as they flare up. And they have to reach a consensus to ensure that once they agree on something, then it's implemented immediately and everybody is on board with that decision, whether you feel it's right or wrong. And then there are other things as well that they will have to look at: climate change, food security, the issue of education, which was the theme of this particular summit, but we've had so little about, but it has been addressed, and we expect to hear more about that at that final communique at the close of this summit.